A bit of history to end out hurricane season, and history in a very good way. Historic levels of quiet in September, October, and now here into November in the tropics. We're breaking it down with your questions and comments on Tracking the Tropics. Hey there, folks. JB Buno here with you live alongside Tracking the Tropics meteorologist Amanda Holly there on the right side of your screen. We really want to hear from you. We're going to get right to and open it up here on the bottom of your screen, the meteorologist Q&A. Want to hear from you here because we're talking about a little bit of history, and history that we can breathe
the past couple of years.
A little sigh of relief.
Yeah.
2020's hurricane season was brutal, record-setting, the pandemic thrown in there. 2020, just a brutal year. 2021's hurricane season, even with Ida, just nothing compared to what we saw last year. And to talk a little bit about that history, yes, Amanda Holly, to tell us all about it.
Yeah, some good news as we look at our Tracking the Tropics episode this Wednesday. Infrared satellite across the Atlantic, it's quiet. We aren't tracking any storms currently. We haven't for 10 days, and no new development expected over the next 5 days. Of course, hurricane season runs through the end of November, and I'm not expecting a significant amount of activity as we head toward the end of the month here. But I did want to talk a little bit about the major hurricanes that we have had this year. Now, we've had 4 in total, and that is slightly above average. Average, we see about 3 per year, 3 major hurricanes. Of course, this is category 3, 4, or 5. But we did have 4 this year. 2 of them made landfall here a little bit closer to the United States. We, of course, had Ida. We did have Grace reach major category 3 hurricane status before it made its second landfall in Mexico. We also had Sam. That was the most recent storm. That formed on September 26th. It lasted for over a week as a major hurricane, finally dissipated, dropped down to a category 2 on October 3rd. And since then, we haven't had any major hurricanes, which we've never had that happen before. So Sam, again, formed on the 25th of September. So from September 26th all the way through today, it's never happened before since records began in 1950 that we haven't had any major hurricanes form. So that's pretty remarkable, actually. It's nice as a meteorologist not to have to track a major hurricane barreling toward the United States. But Ida was looked like our big storm this year, which is a huge difference compared to what we had last year. Last year was intense all the way through the end of November. So we had 4 major hurricanes this year, and the forecast from NOAA was for 3 to 5. So they did a fantastic job with that. Colorado State University predicted 4 major hurricanes as well. And that's what we've had. I don't anticipate any major hurricanes, JB, for the rest of the season.
What about, and I just have to throw this out there just because of what we experienced in 2020, we don't want a Christmas hurricane or Christmas tropical storm or really anything in the month of December or into January. So, again, chances of there being tropical development past the official end of hurricane season, which is, of course, the end of November. What are the chances of that?
Chances very low. They're very, very low every year. But I will say, again, we had La Nina develop about a month ago. It officially is in play now, and La Nina typically promotes tropical development in the Atlantic. When we're in a La Nina weather pattern, what happens is the winds, the upper level winds in the Atlantic Ocean usually decrease a little bit, and that gives a more favorable environment for that tropical development. So when we have La Nina in place, typically we see a higher tropical activity during that year. But it just developed about a month ago. I was a little surprised. We haven't seen anything develop since Tropical Storm Wanda, and even that was in the northern Atlantic. So it's good. But La Nina is in place, and that means we could see something in November, or the rest of November, or even into December. We've even had storms form into January. It's not likely, though, that those impact the United States.
So let me ask you this. We're going to feature your questions and comments in the Facebook Live. We're looking at Twitter, too. Twitter, you can use hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyAmanda, as we do here on Tracking the Tropics, and we'll feature some of your questions and comments coming up. You see it here on the bottom of your screen as we are in the meteorologist Q&A portion of the program. But I'm going to ask this first question, because we're talking about historic levels of quiet, Amanda. September, October, now into November, these quiet months that we have had of late. I'm going to ask why. Are there any factors out there? People have been commenting here on Facebook already, talking about, is it cooler this year? Have sea surface temperatures just not been as warm? Is there a climate pattern that we can discuss? Or is it just sheer good, dumb luck that we just didn't have a major hurricane of note over the last 10 plus weeks?
You know, I would have to do a little bit more research to dig onto why we haven't seen tropical activity, but I will say it's not just here in the Atlantic. We always look and talk about Dr. Philip Klotzbach. He tweets all of the interesting tropical activity facts here. And he just tweeted 45 minutes ago that the globe has had no hurricane strength tropical cyclones since Typhoon Malau on October 29th. And there's only been 5 other times in the satellite era since '66 has the globe had no hurricane strength tropical cyclones from October 30th through November 17th. So it's a quiet period for the entire globe, not just for the Atlantic here. So it's kind of interesting. I will say that we've had a lot of cold fronts come through, and they've been relatively strong fronts. So what that means is in October, we always talk about Florida being really vulnerable, right? Because we'll have a cold front come in, but it stalls out over the area and over the Gulf of Mexico, which is a prime location for tropical systems to develop along a stalled boundary and then kind of move into the state of Florida. Well, the cold fronts that we had developed this year started a little bit earlier, and they moved all the way through. So they really didn't stall out overhead, which was good news for us because, well, they didn't have anything to develop along in the months of October here and now into November.
It's just nice that we're not talking about hurricane after hurricane or tropical storm after tropical storm or iota or eta or zeta or beta or theta.
All of them, gamma,
all of them.
Last year, 30 storms.
Unreal. And so again, the supplemental list that would begin with Adria. We have not that storm that we talked about on the last edition of Tracking the Tropics, that depression, or it was a depression, correct? And it was not, it never reached Adria status, correct?
It did not. It was not even a depression, actually. So it never reached a tropical cyclone, so it never got a name. So we have not tapped into that supplemental list just yet. We have had 21 storms to date, the last one being Tropical Storm Wanda, and that dissipated 10 days ago. So 21 storms, don't get me wrong, that's still a lot of storms. We still used every name on the 2021 list, but luckily, you know, most of them, a lot of them were out in the Atlantic, and they only lasted a couple days.
Kimberly Vickers with the first comment, hashtag AJB. Does the tropic low have anything to do with global warming? What do we say for Kimberly's comment, Amanda Holly?
Tropic low. I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to there, Kimberly. Maybe
I was a little confused myself.
Tropical low activity?
Right.
You know, we talk a lot about global warming, climate change. I will say there's a significant difference between a meteorologist and a climatologist. There are scientists who specifically focus on the climatology and global warming and how all of that factors into kind of our daily weather and our monthly weather. But the tropics go through cycles, and we are currently in about 25-year cycle of increased tropical activity. I think that's why we've seen a little bit more activity over the past couple of years than normal. So it's not necessarily related to global warming. Do I say that the sea surface temperatures are warmer than they have been? Yes, absolutely. The sea surface temperatures are warming up. They are warmer now than they were 30 years ago.
Cam Miller, hashtag AJB, hashtag Hey Amanda. Do you think if there's quiet weather in Florida, is Western New York going to see a ton of snow? Big shout out to digital content producer for Tracking the Tropics, Heather Monahan, who of course we love and a near and dear, just big part of our team from, of course, northern upstate New York. We'll call it upstate New York. Any relation between Florida weather and upstate New York weather other than, of course, all the snowbirds that travel back and forth between New York and Florida this time of year?
Yeah, you know, when I look at longer term patterns, I typically, look at the teleconnections, the atmospheric teleconnections, which La Nina is one of those. And what happens as we head into the winter months with La Nina is it typically keeps that northern jet stream a little bit farther to the north, which would lead more winter storms through the northeast as opposed to down into the southeast. So could you be looking at a little bit more snowfall this winter? It's definitely a possibility if those kind of the tracks of the areas of low pressure, the winter storms, they make their way through the northeast a little bit more.
How about this one from Donovan Ruse, hashtag AJB, hashtag Hey Amanda. How quickly can things change around again?
That's a great question.
Can we have a drop of the hat, out of nowhere tropical storm just pop up on radar between now and Thanksgiving?
You know, it's not out of the question or the chances anything more than 10%, no. But the sea surface temperatures, you can see here, they're still in the low 80s in the Gulf of Mexico. You can actually see in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, kind of cool here. We call that darker red area the loop current, and it's actually really warm waters from the Caribbean pulled up into the Gulf of Mexico and then out through the Gulf Stream. But when tropical systems move over that area, they can feed off of that, right? And again, it's those water temperatures in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico are closer to that 85, 86 degree range still, which is plenty warm enough for that tropical development. So is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. Possibly even into March. What happened last year is La Nina developed as we moved into the winter months, and then it kind of dissipated and we went into a neutral pattern for the summer, and then it redeveloped. So I do think that La Nina will stick around as we head through February and into March, and then it does look like we could go back into that neutral pattern again.
Got another one coming in here, but I want to. You mentioned a tweet earlier, and I'd like to come back on camera here and show you this tweet that came in less than half an hour ago from our friends over at the Hurricane Hunters, and it reads, "Just pre-flight tings. We're off to St. Croix to wrap up our equipment until next hurricane season. Hashtag reserve ready. Hashtag lip sweater weather." and the Hurricane Hunters just getting ready for their well-deserved break. I'm sure that for the Hurricane Hunters, Amanda, Thanksgiving is great because that's that's really like the end of hurricane season for the most part, because we're at the end of the month of November. Yeah,
you know, when you see the Hurricane Hunters kind of wrapping everything up, you can breathe a little bit easier as well. They work tirelessly throughout the entire hurricane season, not just for storms that are going to impact land, but they study lots of storms that form out in the middle of the Atlantic that you at home don't give another second thought about, because, well, we can learn from those storms that are out in the middle of the Atlantic. Even though they're not affecting land, we can still go and get scientific data from those storms. So they're busy from even before the month of June. They start getting their season going really in the month of May. Especially, we've had a lot of storms form in May, JB, for the last few years.
Yeah, don't remind me, Amanda. One more question that we'll take, and it comes from Dan Evans, a frequent commenter. Hashtag Hey Amanda. Looks like we bit the bullet again this year. I know it's a long way off, but do you think next year will be more active? And this is why, Dan, and to our audience, we talk about those NOAA preseason forecast predictions for the season, is because those are the researchers that put in all the tireless amounts of effort and work into forecasting what the season is going to look like. And I know that our Tracking the Tropics team, we're going to have our big season in review next Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central here on Tracking the Tropics. We're going to look back at the entirety of the 2021 hurricane season. But Dan is already thinking about 2022. So what do we say to Dan? Is there any way to look ahead to next year's hurricane season?
Yeah, so I would direct that question more to a climatologist who is really studying those atmospheric teleconnections. You know, we talk about El Nino, La Nina a lot, but there are a lot there's about 14, I think, teleconnections that we study that are global circulations that really affect the tropical development as well. Not just, you know, the daily things that we look at, right? Wind shear, sea surface temperatures, the tropical waves coming off the coast of Africa. Those atmospheric teleconnections really tell the really long range forecast. That's how we can get, you know, the winter season outlooks. And I just haven't really looked at those yet. I'm trying to finish out 2021 first before we look ahead to 2022. But I will say, I'll end it with this. The folks in Louisiana, you know, they saw Ida come through. And I bet you if you asked anybody along the coast of Louisiana or that lives in New Orleans, it was a bad year for them. So that's my point. It only takes one for it to be a bad year. Did, you know, the Tampa Bay area dodged another bullet? Yeah, kind of, but we still saw effects from Elsa. Last year, we kind of, got brushed by Ada as well. So it's just, it only takes one.
And for the folks in Louisiana and even towards the Mississippi Gulf Coast, that's an area that was still battered in 2020's historic hurricane season. So it was just a bit of poor luck that the one major hurricane to hit the United States, being Ida, it hit the same place that just got thoroughly hammered by hurricanes and tropical storms over the course of the 2020, last year's hurricane season. That's going to do it for us here on this edition, folks, of Tracking the Tropics. We believe, provided that there isn't a pop-up storm, we believe that there is one episode remaining in this year's Season 3 of Tracking the Tropics. Really looking forward to our season in review. We're going to look back at the entirety of the 2021 hurricane season and share our thoughts, look back at what was, and we're going to be talking a lot about Ida, the storms that were, the storms that really didn't come to be, everything that we can talk about and break down the 2021 hurricane season with, of course, the Max Defender A team here in Tampa.
We'll do a little bit of digging, too, to see if we can get you an update for 2022.
Yeah, we'll try to look ahead and look back in our season in review coming your way next Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving, here on the website, app, or social media platform that you're watching on presently. For meteorologist Amanda Holly, I'm JB Buno. Thanks so much for watching, as always, here on Tracking the Tropics, and we'll see you next week for our 2021 hurricane season in review.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.